It's 4 o'clock, and I want to be a good steward of your time. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Ms. Ginger's going to lead us into worship with a song, and then we have a list of the people who are here at Shoreline who went on the trip. They're going to take 5 minutes each to share how that trip impacted their life or what was significant about it. And then when that's over, then we'll let anybody who needs to leave because that'll take about an hour. But then afterwards, there is about an 18-and-a-half-minute video if you want to stay and watch. It's all the events and all of it took place, and then really kind of bring it together. But I promise you we'll try to keep to an hour, so I want to do that because the most important thing really is the testimony of how this trip affected different people's lives. So, with that said, Ms. Ginger, lead us into worship.
And y'all welcome to sing with me. Oh, tell the world that I'm a Christian. I'm not ashamed His name to bear. Oh, tell the world that I'm a Christian. I'll take Him with me anywhere. Oh, tell the world how Jesus saved me and how He gave me a life brand new. And I know that if you trust Him, that all He gave me, He'll give to you. Oh, tell the world that He's my Savior. No other one could love me so. My life, my all, is His forever. And where He leads me, I will go. Oh, tell the world that He is coming. It may be near or far away, but we must live as if His coming would be tomorrow or today. For when He comes and life is over, for those who love Him, there's more to be. Eyes have never seen the wonders that He's preparing for you and me. Oh, tell the world that you're a Christian. Be not ashamed His name to bear. Oh, tell the world that you're a Christian and take Him with you everywhere.
No, the mic's off up there. You gotta turn it on.
Can you hear me? Anybody hear me?
You gotta be right in it. Right in it.
Oh, yeah, right to it, okay. Oh. Okay. When I was younger, growing up in Oklahoma, thinking about the things I would do in my future, what I might do, what I could do, what might happen, riding an elephant wasn't on that list anywhere. But I did that. Volunteering at the orphanage was not on that list. Talking to random strangers in a foreign country, none of that was on my list. But here, in 2 weeks, I did all of that. Rode an elephant, first time, last time, never gonna do that again. And I could see Tarzan going to work on that elephant, and Jane saying, "Don't fall off." I felt I was going to several times, but I got through that. Now, the orphanage that I thought might be a problem was easy because they're little kids, 4 to about 9 years old. And
as sweet as they can be, every one of them. The little ones just want you to push them to the swing or go walking with them. The little 4-year-olds just run up and grab my hand and let's walk. And not say a word, just walk around the track that they had at Orange in the backyard. Just wanted to walk or go sit in the swing. The older ones, 8 or 9 years old, wanted to play board games. Checkers, some of them even wanted to try chess. And I didn't have a problem with that because I could beat some of them. So that worked out okay too. But now, street ministry that the preacher wanted us to do, we thought about, well, I'm not going to get through this because that's not what I do. I'm not outgoing, I'm not gregarious. I kind of keep to myself. I can't walk very well, can't get around very well. So, first outing in a shop, everyone's shopping, I don't shop. So I'm finding a place to sit down. Sit there a few minutes and somebody walks up to me. You need something? Are you all right? Concerned because I was sitting down, everybody else was shopping. But I said, no, I'm fine. And we talked for several minutes about several things. And I thought, well, that was nice. And I found out later that he was the manager of the shop. His father was the owner. And he was concerned, but I had someone to talk to. And then later, walking through a mall, again, someone had gone off, and I can't do all that walking, so I'm looking for a place to sit down. The only place I can find is a little bench in a stairwell. So I'll go sit down under the stairs. Just by myself. There's not anybody in sight. And a minute later, a couple comes walking down the stairs. Hi. Hi. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Stop and talk for probably 10 minutes with this couple. And so it's good to have people speak English because that made it easier for me because I have no tie. So I said, well, got through this. So then another day, sitting outside McDonald's, everyone has wandered off. And so I said, well, I'm going to wander off too. So got down 2 stores down, and this guy opening up his store, and he stops me and says, come and look at my new shop. I haven't had it just opened since COVID. It's the first time I got my shop open. And I want to see what you think about it. Went in there and talked to that man for several minutes during that day. And at the same time, I'm handing out some tracts and just doing what I can do. And now we're going to another store, or actually a coffee shop, and this is next door to the orphanage where we were going every day, and we would go there for lunch. And every day in this shop, there's a man, he says he's from, third day, first 2 days I didn't say anything. Third day I said, well, he's here, so I'm going to talk to him. And I asked him, you work here? You see you here every day, and he's got his laptop, and he's typing and writing. You working here, or come by here? And he said, no, I just moved here from China, and I'm waiting for my wife to come join me, so we can settle here. 6 months she'll be here. And then out of the blue, he says, I told him why we were here, and he said, oh, I've been looking for a Christian church. I've gone to several in my travels, and I don't know if there were any around here or not. Do you know of any? I just happen to know one. And I gave him the information on Sprout Church and Pastor Pye, and told him this would be the person you'd want to get in touch with. But anyway, there were several others, but all to say that I didn't have to go looking for anybody. God provided and brought them to me wherever I was. Someone showed up that I could talk to. So that was my story.
Thank you.
Oh, and I got this shirt.
The elephant's on the shirt. There aren't too many ties that stores that had clothes that were my size, so I don't have an elephant shirt. Matter of fact, I had to ride my own elephant because they told me I was too big to ride with my wife, so they split us up. So we were a part of several different ministry things going on, but what I want to talk to you today about was my opportunity to teach in a pastor's conference, leadership of men and their wives, that Debbie and Janice had an opportunity to teach them as well. And I got an inspiration from a letter from a old Scottish pastor who passed away in the early 1900s. But he had written a letter to a friend of his giving him advice. And he actually got sick with typhus fever and passed away before he could send the letter. And it was literally 2 years after his death that another friend of his went to his home and went through his personal things to settle the estate and that sort, and found the letter and actually mailed it and passed it on. And that letter became part of this friend's memoirs that has been now reprinted over 100 times. And the basic advice that gave me the inspiration to teach these men, he told him that for every look at self, take 10 looks at Jesus. So that's what I did with the men. I took them through 10 different steps of Christology, looking at Jesus in 10 different aspects. And then the 10th, I'm going to do a little experiment with you guys. So this is what I did with them. Got what I was expecting, and then got an amazing blessing from it as well. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to need your input, so don't be shy. Just answer right out. If I were to ask you to describe heaven, how would you do it? What would you describe heaven as?
Glorious.
Glorious?
Paradise.
Paradise?
Perfect peace.
Perfect peace?
Place working for Him.
Say again?
A place working and serving for Him.
A place serving for Him, okay?
Being with Jesus.
Being with Jesus. All right, he's still in my thunder. So normally when you ask that question, you get a whole array of answers, and most of them come from the streets of gold, the gates of pearl, no more tears, no more pain, all of those type of descriptions, and they all, unfortunately, seem to be selfish. They're not untrue. Those are all great things, and they're usually the things that we use to entice others to want to go there. But that's not the purpose. When we try to entice others with the good things about heaven as the only description we give of heaven, we leave out unintentionally the most important part. And the most important part of heaven is that we for eternity get to be in Jesus' presence. And that was the conclusion of what I was able to teach these men in Thailand. And it was an amazing blessing for me, from words of encouragement from them as well. Ed's not going to speak today, right? So he had an opportunity to teach them as well, and he taught 5 aspects through James, if I remember correctly. I was listening. They got an equal blessing from him. Debbie and Janice taught the ladies. Of course, I wasn't in there. I think if you'll stay, you'll see part of that on the video later. But it was just an uplifting and encouraging time to be able to share our knowledge of Jesus in those teaching aspects, and to really begin to gain relationships with the gentlemen that are a part of Sprout Church. And Pastor Pai's ambition is to not just have the church there in Chiang Mai, but he's done quite well in spreading to the villages of the mountains and planting churches. And his desire in the future is to continue to plant churches. So that's a prayer request for us and you guys from him, that we would earnestly pray for their endeavors to reach these mountain villages, these people in the surrounding areas, that they could continue to plant churches, and that they would have men step forward and lead and pastor these churches, and he would do the best he can to educate them and prepare them to do so. So I'll close with that. Thank you for your time, and just remember to pray for Pai and his men as they continue to plant churches all across Chiang Mai.
want to second Jimmy's saying first and last time on an elephant. That was unique. I wanted to speak about the women's Bible study. I was able to stay with pastors' wives and teach how to study the Bible inductively, which is something I started to do like within 2 years of being saved. I wasn't saved until I was 33. And it really teaches you how to study the Bible on your own, to not just read commentary, but to really study the Bible, and it sinks in. What amazed me as I was doing that was how attentive and how helpful the women were to each other. There was one woman sitting at the end of the table who looked disengaged, looked sad. But eventually, I think what was happening was that she wasn't understanding because she spoke a different dialect. So they all helped each other, dialect to dialect, and they talked about it, and I could see that they were talking about what I was saying, even though I wasn't understanding anything of what they were saying. So it was really rewarding that way. The next most rewarding thing was my career was a pediatric occupational therapist, and while I was at the orphanage, I was able to use that with the staff in a teaching to how sensory inputs like deep pressure touch versus light touch affects children, different auditory, different visual, all those sensory kind of things. And the director was so, she just seemed very appreciative. That's something they hadn't heard before, and they were able to use it as something, some satisfaction of some government requirement or something. And the third thing that was most impactful was just seeing different people from this church in a different light. Like Jimmy with the little kids. I mean, they were jumping all over him, calling him daddy. I could see that it was hard for him to get up and down off the ground, but he didn't fuss about it at all. And Anson has such a sense of humor and is so different outside of church. It was good to get to see him. And many other people. You know, it was just a nice setting, and I felt like I was really learning things myself, and the environment itself was different. Thank you.
So I got to be a part of the keyboard ministry, which was crazy. I took piano lessons when I was a kid, gave it up, and a little over a year ago, because my son was taking piano lessons, I got to talk to his teacher, and all of a sudden I'm taking piano lessons again. And the next thing I know, I'm in Thailand teaching piano. Who knew? One of the most rewarding moments for me, there were 6 girls that we got to spend 2 weeks with teaching piano, most of them from scratch. One of them got to learn, she did a few chord things like with her phone. But one of the little girls, her name was Music, go figure. I'm hoping maybe there's a connection one day with my son, but that's beside the point. Anyway, her name was Music, and she was just precious. I attached to her, she attached to me, and she was learning how to play Jesus Loves Me. She had never heard it before. And I'm standing there watching her play the notes, and she's like, "Can you sing this for me?" Of course, I can. I got to, for the first time, watch a girl hear the song, Jesus Loves Me. And she was a college-age kid. That was worth going to Thailand for, right there. One other thing that is absent or separate from the keyboard ministry that most of you would not even know about if I didn't say something is we got connected to a couple named Ryan and Ashley who do a bar ministry to the massage parlors and the bars. They caught my attention one day. They're part of Jesse. They're under the foundation that Jesse and Mackenzie oversee. And we got to kind of hear about their ministry. And they were going to go out that night and pass out flyers for Valentine's Day thing for the prostitutes that they are trying to minister to. And I'm like, and they invited us to go if we wanted to. I was like, yeah, I want to go do that because I understand their heart. And so Kenny and I went that night, walked the streets in the red light district, yes, to bar ministries, to prostitutes, because it is a very, very lucrative business over there. And we got to watch Ryan and Ashley minister to these girls. They've been there for 4 years, building relationships with these girls. Pray for them. They are on a very patient calling, and I understand that. And we connected with them. We enjoyed getting to meet them. They are close to our age and packed up and moved to Thailand 4 years ago. And they're just on a patient. They're not there shoving the gospel, trying to, you got to do this, you got to do this. No, they are patiently building relationships. And I watched young prostitutes run to them, hug them, love on them, tell them their stories. And they are doing they have like a little laundromat in the ministry building that they have. You'll hear Carrie say something about this too. And they have a little clothes closet. They have different things, a little food pantry, trying to reach the bar ministry. If they come to your mind, Ryan and Ashley and this ministry, it is an important ministry. They are reaching people that just aren't in a reachable place. But they're there, they're on the grounds. We walk those streets with them. And they were a blessing to me, an encouragement to me. And for those 2 reasons alone, God took me to Thailand.
So I'm very connected to Thailand now. Leaving was awful. I was crying in the airport. But the first part of my trip, I was babysitting the Mitchum girls while they were doing a conference with all of the people that work in their ministry that they have over there. So I was watching those girls, and I absolutely fell in love with them. And I had a dream about them the other night, and I woke up so sad. I've got to go back. But the main part of my story, we went to the villages later in the second week, I think. And the first village we went to, it's about an hour and a half outside of where we were staying in Chiang Mai, up in the mountains. And the lady that we saw first, she reminded me a lot of the hospitality that we saw in India. She even brought out Oreos and other little cookies when we got back from the church that they were building. But they took us up to the church that they're building, and it's way up on this hill, and we were all walking there. My dad was having a hard time. But so Pi had brought us there because he was the one that spoke the most English, and he was telling us what was going on, and we prayed for this building that they seemed to have just started. Just the metal framework was down, and it's going to be a church eventually, and they'll have school for the kids during the weekdays, and he's really, really hoping that they can get somebody to teach English over there to those kids in the villages. So there was a funny part of this. There was a guy that was there. He met with us in Chiang Mai. His name was James. And he expressed beforehand, before even going to the village, that he was hoping to maybe one day live in Chiang Mai. So Pi knew this, Pastor Pi knew this, and he was like, maybe you could teach English to those kids. And James was like, I don't know about that, and then looked at me with sheer panic on his face. And I agreed that he should not be teaching English to children. But it got me thinking, especially with the homeschool background that I have, and I absolutely love school and teaching. I helped teach Anson through a lot, so teaching has been a part of my life in small ways. So I'm hoping that one day I can go and actually live there and teach those kids in the village. So I'm just praying for open doors, which right now I don't have. Number one, I would need an online job, and I'm terrible with technology. And then number two, I'm running a restaurant right now. But whatever happens, I hope that that's a possibility one day. So that was the biggest part of my trip.
I'm not used to this at all, being in front of people, but anyway, I'm up here to give God glory for what He let happen in my life. I got to go, like Jimmy said, never dreamed that I'd be any place like Thailand, but I got to go. And I got to go to Connie's house, which is the orphanage. And I spoke with Connie on that first day, and we talked about some of her things that she does over there. And that woman is amazing. She helps so many young women and all these children. She and her husband, Richard, these children speak English. They are so well trained. They know so much already. So for me to go in and try to teach them the Lord's Prayer and do it in part, and we told them Bible stories, and they would, if you would go a little bit off, they would actually correct you. They knew these things very well. So they ranged anywhere from 3 to 8 years old. We had 2 8-year-olds in there. There were 6 boys and 2 girls. And Connie said that they normally don't have children up to the age of 8, but during COVID, that they had gotten kind of off key. So these 2 boys were still there, and she said, but she was afraid that that was going to change very soon afterwards. But these children, I am such a granny that these children just stole my heart right off. And they would come up, they'd sit on your lap, they'd throw their arm around you. And this one little boy, he kept coming up, he'd throw his arm around me, and he'd say, are you going to come back? You will come back, won't you? And he said, you going to bring me a surprise? And I said, are you going to be a good boy? Yeah. So, anyway, we did teach them, and they had activities and things. These little children, when they would know, like Debbie had told me before I went, that they are so well trained, and they were so well behaved. They knew exactly when it was time for them to go to the restroom and then go over, and they would actually sit on the floor in a line and wait until they were called to go in for their snacks. They would go to the door and line up and wait till it's time for them to go out for their playtime. They did the same thing once mealtime. These children, that's what I said about Connie and her helpers, have worked with these children, and I think that they are so blessed to be in this environment instead of the orphanage of the government orphanage type setting. So I was just very blessed to get to be a part of that. And with Jimmy and Janice and Carrie, they all helped me so much. And like they said, these children, they just went to Jimmy like bees on honey. I mean, they just swarmed him, and he was so good with those children outside, playing with them. And then to see Janice and Carrie get on a trampoline with these boys, I had hurt my foot at the top, and he's like, come on, get on. I said, no, I cannot. But they got up there and actually played with these children, and you could see that of their faces and everything that they was just eating this up. I mean, these children loved the attention so much, that little bit of attention they got from the adults, that I know that it made a difference in their lives, and it sure made a difference in mine. So God blessed me richly with this, and it's a trip I'll never forget. And these little faces I'll see for a long time to come. So thank you all for your prayers for all of us where we live, and appreciate it.
All right, can you hear me? No. Well, my job on the trip was unique in the fact that I didn't have any one particular thing that I went and did with anybody. I got to kind of bounce around and see every group doing stuff. And that was really awesome because I actually got to interact with people in church that I don't normally get to interact with because I'm locked in the back of the sound booth all the time. So that was a real blessing for me, just being able to see and interact with everybody. But one of the main things I took away from the trip was just walking around and being introduced to the culture and some of the religious ties of Buddhism there. And the fact that they are so tightly bound to their traditions that that's part of who they are. To be Thai is to be Buddhist, is what you always hear when you're talking to them. We actually had difficulty ministering to people because when you go and talk to them and you ask them about, do you know anything about Christianity or Christ? They go, no, I'm Thai, so I'm Buddhist. I don't want to talk about it. We had many people deal with that. And just the level of dedication that they have to this, and yet they're still not devout to it. A lot of the Buddhism isn't really in depth with the people because they have a lot of their just Thai traditions still involved and blended into the religion. And they don't know what the religion teaches, they just go along with it. It's a blind faith to their tradition. And unfortunately, there's a lot of the same thing here in the United States. We just come, do what we traditionally do. We show up to church once, maybe twice a week, and we do our normal things, and then we go about our regular daily lives, not paying attention to what it is that God's calling us to do. Whether it is to go to another country or not, doesn't matter. You're all called to do something. And I just don't want us as the church in America to fall into the trap of blind tradition as opposed to it being a part of our everyday lives, glorifying God. Thank you.
Too high. I'm too short. Can you hear? Yes. All right. First of all, my husband Jimmy told me I couldn't cry when I got up here. But if anybody knows me, I'm a crier. When I went to India, to Thailand, I really did not know what to expect when I got there. I had prayed that I would get the same blessing that Vonda had got when she went to India. I just wanted a little piece of it because she got such a great blessing. But I got so much. To begin with, I had the opportunity to help Vonda in the keyboard class. Now, I'm a learner myself. I'm just starting out. So I was there supposedly to teach these young girls. But in the end, they taught me. They taught me about love. They taught me about friendship. These young girls would just help each other so much. We had one, her name was Anne, and she spoke English. So she was like our godsend because everything we said, she would translate to these other girls. And out of these 6 girls, we had one that was a non-believer. Now you're talking about blessing your heart. I wanted to stand up and shout when I saw 2 of these girls standing at this table witnessing about Jesus Christ to this non-believer. It made my heart, it was so overwhelming to me to see that. The love that they had for each other. In Thailand, I met Wandi and her daughter Ann, and Ann's children, and I know Pastor Ed and Debbie have been going there for years, and they're friends with them, and I can understand why, because when I met them, I loved Wandi, but there was something about Ann that just hit me. I don't know, I felt an attachment to her. I just felt like, and when I went to leave at the airport, she just cried so hard, and I was crying so hard with her. But what was the greatest blessing was to see Pastor Ed baptize 2 of these women. He baptized Ann and her daughter Samantha. And honest to goodnessly, I wanted to get in that water with her. I felt that much connection to her. I wanted to get in the water with her. It was also something I had never thought about, praying in a Buddhist temple And I had the opportunity to, I think 5 or 6 of us make a circle and sit there with our Bible. And we walked in and there's this monk sitting over there, and none of us are sure if he's alive because he's not moving, absolutely not moving. I know he's probably breathing. At first we weren't sure he was because he just didn't move. But to see the countryside like we saw and some of the conditions that these people live in, it made me almost ashamed to come home to my nice house because some of them don't have that. We rode down a raft, on a bamboo raft, and I saw shanty shacks there. And I'm thinking, okay, they're abandoned. And look, and there's clothes hanging on the fence that look as black as the dirt. And 2 little kids playing. And they're living in that. They're living in that. There are a lot of people in that country that doesn't know and have never heard Jesus' name. And we, as Christians, not just Americans, sometimes Americans, we sometimes are selfish and we take things for granted. We expect to go home and have dinner tonight. We expect to get in our car and go somewhere. Some of them don't have that hope. They don't have that hope. But you know what? We as Christians, our job is to share the word. And if that means going to Thailand or India or Africa or wherever it is, everybody in the United States has heard the name of Jesus. But these countries, some of these countries have not. I thank God for him giving me the opportunity to go, and I will forever remember this trip. I left a piece of my heart there. I'm friends on Facebook with these girls, and I hope I can continue a relationship with them. And I think I heard that the girl they were witnessing to accepted Christ, and that was worth it all.
Hello. So I was able to work in the ministry with Ashley and Ryan, and they have a ministry to the prostitutes. So what they did, I think around 2020, during COVID, they would make food packages and deliver them in the red light district. But also out of that came Illuminate, which they opened, and it has Ryan teaches finance and budgeting to the prostitutes, and Ashley teaches cooking and English classes. Well, they also have a clothing closet, and they needed some help organizing that. Well, that was right up my alley because I actually do a lot of garage sales. And so Jimmy, Tina, Braylon, and Debbie and me, we worked organizing the clothes, discarding the ones that were not good for women in that business, and we got them all hung, and then I was able to stage it. And I think you'll see some of the photographs of the clothing closet. So they let the women come there and shop for free, and it turned out really well. Well, I really am not one that's into evangelism, and I should be, but Tina and I were at the Amazon cafe, and we actually got to talk with a couple, and they were Chinese from Hong Kong. So they were, the wife was very interested in us telling the husband about Jesus, but I couldn't really figure out if she was a Christian or not. But he was very interested, and so they speak Cantonese, but I know a little bit of Mandarin, so I spoke Mandarin to him, and he said, but I just have one question. How do you speak Mandarin? Did you learn to speak Mandarin better than me? I said, I only know these few words, that's it. But they asked for our testimony, which I thought was really interesting. So Tina gave her testimony because they were wondering how someone so young was committed. and then I gave my testimony. But they were very interested, and I thought that was really interesting. Typically, when I try to witness to people, I get the atheists, the ones not interested. So the first person I actually did try to witness to, they spoke English, they were Vietnamese. I said, and I'm here with our pastor to learn the culture and talk about religion. And I said, can I tell you basically about Jesus? No, we're Buddhists. I'm like, well, okay, that's what I get. But I did get a chance to talk with the Asian couple, Gary and Paula. They take on English names. And also the gentleman that did the breakfast every morning at the hotel. Every day he would fix a plate. He was Buddhist, he was Thai. He would fix a plate and he'd take it and put it outside for the ancestors. So that's something that they do, which we don't understand. But anyway, the last morning there, I was able to, he didn't speak English well, I was able to give him a tract and some of my my Thai baht. And that was it. It was an interesting trip. Thank you.
Oh boy. This trip was amazing. Kathy summed it up. The children at the orphanage really just touched my heart. Kathy was amazing. She orchestrated everything so well. She packaged up special gifts for them, and it was a blessing to work with the children and with Kathy. I spent some time at the orphanage. I guess it was about 2 days there, and then from there, Debbie had initially, before going on this trip, had said, guess what? There's a wall that needs to be painted, and they're thinking of a mural, and you'd be really good at doing a mural. Yes, Michelle, exactly. And I said, Debbie, I've never done a mural before. I've never, ever done a mural. God will equip you. So that stayed in my mind. The whole trip, that stayed in my mind. And I gained some references from Monet and Van Gogh, and I had the printouts. So I was like, there were so many ifs. What size is this wall? What color is the background of this wall? Getting the paints, getting the brushes and everything. Well, before I left, a woman I work with, she came up and she said, the Lord told me to give you this, and she handed me some $20 bills. And right then I knew, okay, these are for the paints. So she said, do something with them. I was like, wow, this is crazy. So then Pastor and Kenny and I went shopping, and we found a store that had paints better than the art store, better than Walmart, and the brushes better than Walmart. I was like, this is really amazing. So then I started, and the minute my pencil touched the wall was perfect, by the way. It was light gray, and when the pencil hit the wall, that was it. The Lord just worked through me. Normally, it goes from my head to my hand, and from my hand to my head. This time, it went from my hand to my heart to my head. And I didn't stop for a day and a half, and it was completed. The most rewarding part of that was I glorified the Lord. The best part of the process was hearing the girls downstairs. This was at Mooney, the shelter for the women, and they would come and go, and they would be laughing downstairs and having a good time, and they'd make some food, and I'd slip down once in a while, change my water, and I'd hear them talking in Thai. the view, this was for Mackenzie's counseling room. She had a sofa and a chair, and so her idea was she'd be sitting in the chair facing the mural, and the girls would be sitting on the couch. Well, behind Mackenzie's chair was a window that was closed. The curtain was drawn closed. So I open up the window, and what do I see but banana trees and corrugated rooftops. This is what the people lived in. To me, it's beauty, but on the other hand, it's very, very sad that in today's world, people still live in corrugated rooftops. So that was my experience. The last part of the trip, that was incredible. That was with Janice and Jimmy and myself, and we went to McDonald's and we evangelized. Evangelism, it's just not the right word for the experience that you have and the blessing that you have to introduce people to Jesus Christ. There were people there from Chile who they didn't know who Jesus was. I asked them, I said, do you know who Jesus Christ is? And they said, no. 3 women. 3 women. Never heard of Jesus. So that was a blessing. The trip was a blessing. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. And the next speaker is coming up.
25 years ago, Ed and I went to Chiang Mai, Thailand for the first time. We met Wendy, we met Ann, her daughter, they worked together. And Ann at that time was about 19, just married, expecting a baby. The next year we went, there was that baby. I got to hold that baby in my arms and sing Amazing Grace over her and pray over her. A couple years went by, another baby. Got to hold that baby, sing Amazing Grace over her, prayed over her. A few years later, and every year we would go, 2 or 3 times each year. This was my 22nd time to Thailand, Ed's 52nd. And every time we go, we would pray, we would have students or church members that would be there, and they would witness to Wendy and Ann and the 2 daughters, and they would pray for them, and nothing ever happened. Ed became professor at Truett McConnell University. The first year there, Mackenzie and Jesse were students. He took them on a short-term trip to Malaysia. They fell in love with Asia and with each other. They said, we want to serve in Thailand. On their capstone trip, which is the last year of their college adventure, we all went to Chiang Mai, Thailand for their 6 weeks capstone trip. They said, we're coming back here to live. This is where God has called us. So they get married in August. Ed does the wedding. They go through the holiday season, and the next winter they're off to Thailand to live. They are self-supportive. They do work with GCF, which is, I can't remember what the initials stand for, something about global and something about family, and that's all I remember. But it's got a lot of arms. The orphanage is one of the arms. Illuminate is one of the arms. Lots of arms. Anyway, they were living there, and so they began to constantly and consistently nurture, and Fonda used that word, patience. And in other cultures, you can't just throw Jesus in people's face and expect them to convert immediately. It's a patiently waiting, a patiently ministering and loving on these people that brings them to Jesus. Jesus was always patient with people if you read his ministry. He never just threw himself out there and said, you've got to believe in me right now or else. He was always patient, and he's still patient with us. Isn't he patient with you? He's very patient with me. So Jesse and Mackenzie began to share with Ann and her daughters and Wendy. And one night, Ann and her 2 daughters prayed and asked Jesus to be their Savior. This was after 20 years of me and Ed going and praying and going and praying and going and praying and sharing and sharing and sharing. And Ed can tell you names of great missionaries who went to China and served and worked and died in the fields of China or in the fields of Vietnam or in the fields of some other country, and they never saw a convert. I was not able to lead these girls to the Lord, but I mentored Mackenzie in college. So my mentoring and our praying led to these girls coming to know Jesus. Patiently waiting, patiently ministering, patiently loving them to the Lord. Ed when we arrived, they said to us, we're going to get baptized. Ed was able to walk in that pool, baptize Ann and the oldest daughter. Last year, Lord, in 2019 when we went, they asked me to give them their American name, which is an honor because they all want their American names. And so I named them after my granddaughters, Samantha and Chelsea, because they act just like my granddaughters, Samantha and Chelsea. And they're about the same age. And so Samantha and Ann were baptized, and Ed got to do the baptism. Full circle, a full circle. It is so rare to get to see the full circle. People have served on the mission field for years and never seen a full circle. And so we have that full circle, and he's yelling at me for it. But what a blessing it was to have the circle full and have our quiver full of children all over the world. Thank you.
People ask, why did I go to Thailand so much? I think the question has been answered. I have two families that were my former students, and they're now living in Thailand and have been for years. And Jesse and Mackenzie you've met. Ryan and Brittany you haven't met unless you were on the trip and then you met them. And what a blessing, because they're just working so hard for Christ and making His name known. And now God has started working in someone else's heart. And who knows what that might lead to. And I'm not her daddy, but I'm her pastor. I can't just say how proud I am of her. Just to be open to the Holy Spirit of God, her age. Well, if I could go back and be that open, God, what do you want from me when I'm 19, 20, 21? But we can't do that. But we can be faithful where we are now to be available to Him. Well, this is our testimony time. We're going to stand and sing. I think you were given a song sheet. And then after the song, that will be our dismissal. If you need to leave, please feel free to go. But if not, if you've got 18 and a half more minutes, we've got a quick video to show you. And all the things they've talked about, it'll make sense. Now, there are a couple things that Garen was not able to get. So if you don't see your picture in here you hoped would be in here, we're still working to get pictures and slides. So hopefully we can put a fuller one together in the future. And the song we're singing is?
Our Heart.
Our Heart.
Just the chorus part. Well, I think that's all you'll have on your paper anyway.
It's
talk about a special prayer? And do we know some of that prayer? Let's try it. Want to? Let's try it from the top. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Now today, come on. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive
Anne has been a huge help for us. The very first day, there was very little English speaking, and we actually know like 0 time, and Anne got us through that first day. So they have just been a huge blessing to me as well. So this is music. She loved to play Amazing Grace. One of the things that I shared with the group, we tried to share music stories and how music has impacted our lives. And of course, Amazing Grace is one of those songs that was special to me, is special to many of you. My papa sang it to me as a little girl. So music, I learned to play that, and she asked me to sing with her. So we're going to do 3 verses. I'll sing the first one with her. Then we will do 'Twas Grace That Taught. And y'all can join us. And then we'll do, of course, and we've been there 10,000 years. And y'all can sing with us, all right? Deep breath.
I once was lost.
I said, you choose what you want to play. And Jane wanted to do "'Tis So Sweet," which was one of the last songs we covered. But she wanted to do it to be an encouragement to her mom, who was an unbeliever. So Jane and I are going to do it together, and she's very nervous, but she's going to do great. You guys.
I hope that the thing that you got out of tonight is if you prayed for us, or if you supported us financially, or you went on the trip, every one of us was a part of what God did there. And it took all of us to do it. I remember one year, and I'm not going to take a lot of time with this, I remember one year we did the keyboard ministry. It was only the third year we had done it. And there's 16 students, all lost. And God showed up, and 9 of them got saved. You give them a thimble worth of your time and attention, and they'll pay you back with a 55-gallon drum of love and gratitude. They're some of the most hospitable people anywhere on the planet. And so I love Thailand, I love the people. If it's God's will, I don't know if I'll ever get to go back. But I can't imagine not going back, but you never know what God's plans are. But I do hope if I get to go back, I get to baptize 2 more. Pray for one, Debbie. I cannot imagine heaven without her. She's closer than my sister. You know? She's always been there in the last 25, 30 years. Always been there to serve me, to whatever I need her to do. And she always does it with such grace. And she doesn't mind doing anything for anybody. And I want her to be saved so bad. So somebody asked me one time something about, well, what if God doesn't save her? I said, well, I'll become a 38-point Calvinist if he'll save her. And of course, there is no such animal. Just meaning that, hey, whatever it takes, I just want to see her in heaven. Well, thank y'all for being here. Let me pray, and just be praying if God does allow us to go back to India or Thailand or somewhere else, Ethiopia, wherever. Be praying. God might want you to go on that next trip if there's a next one. So just be praying for the future and just see what God has for you. Like you heard from several, they said, we never thought we would go to Thailand or anywhere outside the country. But I want you to also notice God used the talents that they had. And God used those talents for His honor and His glory. He gave you the talents for a reason. And so I got to see all these guys use their talents. And even painting a tree on the wall, which I wish we had a picture of that. We'll get a picture of it to show you. Beautiful tree. And it's just amazing. And so, anyway, let me pray for you. And thank you so much for supporting this trip and praying for us, because it really, really means a lot. Father, thank you so much for the fact we can come together tonight and just